Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the moment of truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Marion County, Florida, Friday, January 17th, 2025, 6 o'clock p.m. Jakara Wilson was a driver for Kroger's. On the evening of January 17th, she was making a delivery of groceries in a company van. Driving through a wooded area in Ocala National Forest, she went through a small town called Altoona. Population 100 people. That's not a small town, that's just a neighborhood. Well, this is Ron DeSantis' Florida, so every town is a sundown town. Obviously, going through such a rural area, there's no good roads, and just her luck, her van wound up getting stuck in some sandy ditch. She contacted the customers she had been bringing the delivery to and told them that they would have to come meet her and pick up their groceries. Meanwhile, she called for a tow truck. While waiting for the tow truck, a young white woman came up and knocked on her window telling her that her grandfather could pull her van out of the sand for $100. Jakara declined the generous offer, saying that a tow truck was already on the way. She was in a company van after all, and Kroger's requires them to use a professional towing service for obvious reasons of liability. Nobody asked for Uncle Cletus's help. But she was going to get it anyway, and that's when this incident went from an inconvenience to a remake of Deliverance. Enter Richard Fritzinger. He reiterated the offer that the young white woman had made, and this time Jakara rolled up her window. When the tow truck driver arrived, Fritzinger stepped in front of the van and refused to let the tow truck driver pull the vehicle out, claiming that he owned the road. Literally.
Called public access, dude.
No,
get a life.
No.
Learn the law, bro.
I did. I owned it.
The tow truck driver managed to get a tow strap on the vehicle, but Fritzinger removed the tow strap and then threw it, striking the tow driver in the face, injuring him. The two men got into a scuffle. At that point, Fritzinger called in some backup from the Moonshine Militia, in this case his grandson, who insisted that it was a private road and nobody gets to tow anyone there except for Uncle Cletus, Grandpa Fritz. This led to a fight between the tow driver and the grandson, with Cletus Jr. winding up on the ground in a state of undress. Jakara called 911, who seemed more interested in badgering her with questions than in actually sending any sort of assistance. Fritz wasn't through causing trouble yet because he tried to attack the tow driver again. After pushing Fritz away, the tow driver threatened to use his knife if either Fritz or his grandson attacked him again. Fritz then went right back to standing in front of Jakara's Kroger's van. This old coot must have really needed that $100. I'm starting to understand why his surname is Fritzinger, because clearly his brain is on the Fritz. More people showed up, and it goes to prove why we have so much violence and death out in those rural areas. Because the less people there are, the more degeneracy there seems to be. Makes sense, though. Public morals only apply if you lived around a public that you gotta be moral around. The sheriffs finally showed up to this Jerry Springer episode, and Jakara showed them the video, which corroborated her version of the events. Fritzinger was arrested for false imprisonment, which is a form of kidnapping, and from there he was taken to the Marion County Jail to get his mugshot. I'm really surprised that people have to resort to measures like this, especially in Ron DeSantis' Florida, where he claims that the economy is so great because of his stellar leadership. But look at what's going on in places like Altoona. You have these redneck ransoms, or should I call it a KKK kidnapping. Now, Jakara didn't post the video of the incident in January. In fact, she waited until the prosecutorial proceedings were over, which happened last month. Now, I don't know if this guy hired a lawyer or if he had a public defender, but it doesn't matter, because for those with racial immunity from the law, their skin color gives them all the legal defense they need.
This man literally tried to kidnap me and only got 2 years probation, y'all. 2 years probation. This man right here. This man. That's crazy.
So this reprobate and his inbred kin accost a lone black woman stranded in the middle of nowhere when they know doggone well that people like them make black people very nervous, and with good reason. Because of things like this guy tried to extort her for $100 for something that for all we know they set up themselves. They probably dug that hole and waited for some hapless passerby to fall into it, and then they offered to help them for $100. Say, does anyone know what the going price is for crystal meth in Florida these days? I'm just asking for a friend. And then they attack the tow driver and claim that they own the road. The crimes that Cletus and his kin committed that night go well beyond unlawful imprisonment. You also had extortion and assault. This story hasn't gotten anywhere near the coverage that it deserves, and a large part of that happens to be because the video wasn't released until after the legal proceedings were over, or rather legal cover-up. And that's one of the things that black folks want to be mindful of. When it comes to actually having public opinion turn against scumbags like this, it's best to have the video come to light as soon as these incidents occur. Of course, the prosecutors are going to be telling people, well, that would muddy the water and complicate things. Yeah, it complicates the cover-up. And that's the reason why you didn't even hear about this incident until now, because the victim hadn't posted the video until last month. We'll continue with the moment of truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready, and always carry your steel. Power Tools. Because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. And does Grandpa Cletus have any priors? Well, haven't been able to find any hard evidence about that, but given his lawless behavior, does he need to have any priors? I'd say this incident is proof enough that he's a criminal. And we know it's no coincidence that this happened to a black delivery driver. Black delivery drivers are constantly being targeted, assaulted, even shot at by white racists who claim that they own the neighborhood, or in this case, they own the road. And why would they be so arrogant as to think that? For the same reason that they weren't worried about being prosecuted, because they know that the police and the prosecutors are as racist as they are and won't enforce the laws, at least not against them. And while incidents like this do happen everywhere in America, it happens disproportionately in Florida, because this was the result that Ron DeSantis and Chris Rufo wanted. All of their anti-black hysteria was being done specifically to embolden racists and bigots like this to engage in precisely this kind of violent targeting of black citizens. That's what it was meant to do. It was meant to give them the green light and let them know that they had a fellow reprobate in the governor's mansion. But then again, when's the last time Florida hasn't had a reprobate as governor? DeSantis liked to run around arbitrarily removing DAs from office if he said that they weren't being tough enough on crime. Well, do you think that he'll be going after this prosecutor and saying that they clearly aren't carrying out their duties as they need to and that they need to be removed? Of course not, because this was what he wanted. It was not about punishing crime. What it was about is the Republicans continuing their political project of removing and attacking elected officials if they can't get their own guys in office. That's what that's about. And remember, DeSantis was the one who also made headlines because he wanted to legalize motorists running over protesters, specifically during the BLM protests. Well, if this young woman had run over Cletus, do you think DeSantis would say, well, he shouldn't have been standing there? Of course not, because this is not about law. It's never about law. It's about white primacy, the same problem that it's always been. And while it is good that this tow truck driver in particular was handling taking out the trash, the reality is black people, especially those in the delivery business, you can't rest on that. Incidents like this don't happen because of some sort of misunderstanding. They happen precisely because these degenerates understand full well that there's an entire system of racial immunity from law that makes sure that they don't go to prison for their crimes. Whether it be Ahmaud Arbery or this young woman here, whenever they spy some black person who's in their neck of the woods, that's when they think that they can get away with something. Well, black people have a right to be safe wherever they are. Whether it's at home, whether it's out in public, or on the job. And that being the case, as this young woman found out, the police are not going to be rendering help. They were spending all of their time asking her 50 freaking questions while she was on the phone when they already had her location. They were not interested in dispatching any of the thugs in blue. What they were interested in was just wasting time. It's good that this incident has come to light, that the video got posted, and at least people know that this happened. But what also needs to happen is black people have to be very serious when it comes to their personal protection. In this case, Cletus was hard up for some cash and he was trying to shake down a black person for some money. But next time, it could be like these other cases where you got some racist scumbag who thinks that they're going to get away with murder, literally. And that's why for black people in particular, personal protection is a must, especially if you're one of these delivery drivers. Some criminal Cletus calls himself trying to unlawfully imprison you or extort you for money. You need to be ready to show that the only thing you're going to be delivering is justice. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Deep Eye 904, Antonio Daniels, Abram Pruitt, Mary Bass, and Dia Williams. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.